noise, but the other mic has that by the speaker. There's no way to switch.
Yes.
I don't know if I have.
Okay, well, let's switch mine. Oh, okay. We were getting that one. Did it really cut out bad? Yeah, it was. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Let's take some thoughts from you related to support. Or define autonomy. What's an area of autonomy some of you wish you had more of? Go ahead. Yeah. No. Is there an area that in which you wish you had more autonomy?
It's
Under master schedule, you have very little autonomy right now. Is that what you're saying? Okay. So will EDs at some point when you talk about either sense make or on a master schedule at some point? Go ahead.
The placement of assistant principals.
The placement of assistant principals. Thanks for bringing that up. Delinda and I talked about this yesterday, so I asked her to bring it up today. Well, let's talk about that. How many assistant principals have been forced placed? We'll use that term, even though it's not the right term. 1, 2. I just want to get a feel. So about 15, maybe 15, 16. A few more hits, about 20. All right. So here's the part of the battlefield you don't see. The part of the battlefield that you don't see is that we have added assistant principals in some places, and then we've had decreases in staff and enrollment in other places. And unless you collectively remove assistant principals who are not strong, we're going to have a problem. They're chapter 21, we have to make sure that they have a place. We have to make sure that they have a place. And so, in some cases, we're going to have to give them a job. And that's why it feels like forced place. Now, having said that, I'm a firm believer that we have to give principals the autonomy to pick their staff, their assistant principals and teachers. So this is one of those conflicting things where we have to get better at making sure we don't have a handful of assistant principals being moved, or even several assistant principals being moved. You have to be good at coaching out, removing the assistant principals who are not strong. Because I think the reason why a person might feel something was done to them is because they're getting an assistant principal they don't really believe is that strong. If you were given a superstar, nobody would complain about that, probably. I mean, there might be a little bit of complaint, but... So, yes, I think defined autonomy would work better. We need to broaden those parameters. We'll do a better job of making sure we don't have a lot of assistant principal positions. Some of it we can't help. Some of it we're not going to be able to help. We're going to have to place some. But for the most part, we'll try not to. We have about 350 assistant principals. That's a lot of assistant principals. Other areas of autonomy.
Technology constraints on some campuses, there could be some flexibility with the use of reasoning mind.
So in reasoning mind, when I talked to you about programs, I said rarely would we dictate a program. I didn't say never. You had a choice this year, and I hope it got communicated this way. You had a choice for this coming year. We're going to do second grade, third grade, fourth grade, not in the strategic feeder patterns, but in the rest of the district, fourth grade, you could opt out of, as long as you presented a rationale for opting out. Did you get that memo? Okay. How many of you opted out? Good. That seems like we're growing in autonomy. It's a balance. Again, it's defined autonomy. You had an opt-out option. Those who opted out, you probably had to present a case and make a case to your EDs. And then I hope they honored it for the most part. They may not have honored it if your scores are bad or you don't have, a track record of success. But it sounds like many of you did opt out and your request was honored. Yes?
It to third and fourth, we had to continue going back to second instead of having an option to move to second and third graders. They had been in the program to third and fourth. And I was one of the schools that said, I want to start at second grade, but not now. They take too long to do the reporting and the notebooking, and it takes them almost till January to learn. So we didn't get that option.
Right, but it's one of those battlefield bullets things that you don't see. But one of the programs we've committed to, at least for a while, until we see the trend data, is second and third grade reasoning on. I can talk to you, there's a whole story behind that. And at some point, we'll have coffee, we'll talk. Yes?
The hours of our custodial staff and new responsibilities.
Okay, so this is a great example of two levels of organization that have responsibility for the cleaning and maintaining the school, right? The hours of custodial staff. The custodial staff actually is in any district, not just Dallas ISD. You talk to your friends in other districts, it's always an issue, right? Who evaluates them? Who do they work for? Are they detailed to the school, and what does that mean? Do they take direction from you, or do they take direction from Central? It is a tough thing. You don't want to be there at night, right, supervising the custodians. So who owns them and who does the work and who's accountable for the results? So this is a tough one, and I don't have the answer except the guidance is stick to the results. If the building is clean, if the building is maintained, then allow the custodial or the operations to run it. If the building isn't clean and not maintained, then that's when we have problems. We got to stick to the same areas and use these mitigating circumstances, right? Got to have common goals, assumption of good intentions, clarity of roles and responsibilities, clarity around whose decision is whose, flexibility and ability to deal with ambiguity, and systems thinking. We have to do economies of scale with our custodial staff. It was not my choice to cut 100 custodians last year. So you go to the district, you have 100 custodians lost, you have 15% raises cut, we have X. X number of custodians, X number of resources. Now the goal is get the buildings clean and maintained to the best we can. We are now adding custodians this coming year. It's part of the budget. We'll see if the budget is passed on Thursday. We're going to be adding custodians, and we'll see how that works. By the way, your climate surveys say, most people, the overwhelming majority of your staff, believe the buildings are clean and safe. That question on the climate survey, I think, got the highest score. The highest score came on that question. Buildings are clean and safe. So if the teachers and staff believe the buildings are clean and safe, they probably are clean and safe. Because that's an area people would certainly mark as not clean and safe if they weren't. Still, I appreciate that there's that creative tension there. I would say let the operations do it as long as the building is clean and safe. Now, if it's not, let's talk about those specific examples. Here's one other thing that happened this year, and I'm not saying you're talking about this, but I'm going to raise it just because I'm thinking about it right now. Some people approach operations to say, we need this building engineer to work during the daytime versus the evening, not because of the result, but because of the person they wanted to support. The adult had gotten used to the daytime schedule, their kid was playing sports or whatever, so it was an inconvenience to them. In most cases, you need the main supervisor to be where the people are. So if you have 4 custodians working at night in the middle school, your building engineer should probably be working at night with those custodians. And you can put a non-supervisor who works by himself, so he supervises himself during the day. What was the best for that school? That's the question that should have been asked. And the result is how you measure what's best for that school. Safe and clean, that's what's best. Now in some schools, there weren't enough custodians, that's true, that's why we're adding them, and we'll adjust that over time. So the question is what's safe, what's clean, that's what you need. Not what you're used to and not what the adults are used to. The results matter. So if you're going to bring something to the Chief of Operations, and again, this is that defined autonomy example. Go to your Chief of Operations or to the ED who goes to the Chief of Operations and say, my building isn't clean, here's why, here's what's going on, I need a different solution. That's the way to argue that case. Because they both have the same goal. You got to assume good intentions, got to have that common goal, and then clarity of roles and responsibilities. I think that's the way to approach most questions where there's adult issues getting in the way. go back to what the result is and what the common goal is. And mind you, I get it, we didn't have enough custodians this year. So there's going to be some of that. We're adding. We can only add so much at a time. I think we're adding 30 custodians. It's a big district, so 30 is not, I get it, not a lot, but it will help considerably in 30 schools. Okay. And and again, I'm going to go back to the fact that even with the shortage, the surveys from your teachers and staff was that the buildings are clean and safe. That's not bad. They did a pretty good job given what they had to deal with. All right, I'm going to go on. I'm almost done here. Let's go back to the last thing. It is fast-paced. The world is changing quickly. Education profession is changing quickly. You have to build an adaptive organization. We have to help. You have to build. What does that mean? What does that look like? An adaptive organization. The problem with education is that we're not adaptive. We're calcified. We don't adapt well to the changing battlefield. We're fighting the, World War II trench warfare. Actually, World War I, better example. When really we need to fight the, 2012 insurgent Afghanistan battle. Adaptive, not calcified. How do you do that? Napoleon had a phrase, move to the sound of the guns. Even back then, he was thinking, we need an adaptive organization. He probably said it just like that, too. But he said this instead, move to the sound of the gun. What that meant, and I think I told you before, is that he couldn't afford to have generals and colonels who would wait for every order to come down. Tell me what to do. What do I need to do here? How do I solve this problem? He said, look, here's one principle that you need to follow. When you hear the cannons firing, go there. Okay? You don't need a memo, you don't need smoke signals, you don't need a courier on horse because it's not adaptive, it's not fast enough. I gotta write a little note in my, with my feather pen and ink, give it to a courier, hope he makes it to you. He has to find you. It's not like, we've got GPS. It's to find you on this big battlefield and then give you instructions to move. And by that time, there'll be another, action over here. What are you going to do? That's not adaptive. So he just told him, look, move to the sound of the guns. And that's what I'm going to tell you. Move to the sound of the guns this way. First of all, you have to have clear decision-making processes in your organization. If people in your organization know who makes which decisions and the parameters around decision-making, they will be able to be more adaptive. They will be able to do the work. So who makes a decision? I think this is a good way to look at decision-making, and I think you should share with your staff, but you don't have to. But this might be one way you think about decision-making. There are 5 decision-making levels, or types of decisions. A D1 decision is the decision the leader makes without any input. No input. D1. D2 is a decision the leader makes with input. You're going to get various people's opinion. D3 is the decision the system makes, the leader and others make, collaboratively. The leader's input and everybody else's input is considered equally, and you come to consensus. That's a D3 decision. D4 is a decision the leader makes or allows other people to make with the leader's input. So the leader says, you make the decision, but please consider my input. It's just input, but you make the decision. And then finally, D5 is a decision the leader allows others to make without any input from the leader. D1 through D5. You're a leader, you make decisions all the the time. Your school makes a decision, teachers are making decisions, people are making decisions all the time. Which ones are D1, which ones are D5, which ones are in between. Good, effective organizations do not operate with solely D1 decisions, nor do they operate with solely D5 decisions. That's why they have leaders. In fact, in one study, and I put it up here, effective organizations, usually, there's all kinds of decisions in a day, but on average, the decisions are somewhere between D2 and D3. Those are the types of decisions you want a good organization to make over time. But it depends, too. It depends on several things. Number one, it depends on the urgency of the situation. So sometimes, leader, you have to make a D1 decision without any input if it's urgent. If there's a crisis, I hope you're not, a kid brings a gun, I hope you're not sitting around, wait, I gotta get a committee together, let's figure this out, by consensus, what's your vote? No. Make a D1 decision, that's why you have a job sometime. The experience level of the staff is inexperienced, you're gonna make more D2 decisions versus D4 decisions. If there's nothing working, the processes are not mature, you're going to make more D2, D1 decisions than D4, D5 decisions. And then, if you don't have a strong leadership pool, you're going to make more D2, D3 decisions than D4, D5 decisions. So it really depends, but talking to your staff around who makes what decisions when is an important thing. And letting people know that not all decisions are going to be D3. It drives me crazy sometimes reading the paper. This group of teachers say, well, we didn't reach that decision through consensus. As if every decision should be reached through consensus. Some should, and some should not. It depends on these other characteristics. In the end, though, not all decisions should be left to you. It should be D4s and D5s that you distribute. So you might give guidance, your input, but you need to make sure that some other people in your organization can make the decisions that are theirs to make. You do that through PLCs, you do that through setting your own parameters and letting people do their work. That's how you get adaptive. If teachers and other people in your organization are waiting for you to make all the decisions, it ain't going to happen. You will be calcified, you'll be slow to adapt. The same thing goes with us at district level. Again, it amazes me people think that we want to make all the decisions. First of all, there's no way that can happen. Second of all, that's not an adaptive organization. Setting parameters is not the same thing as making decisions. Principals, you have a lot of control. Move to the sound of the guns. Finally, we need a problem-solving culture. The EDs have heard this a lot in assistant soups. We want them to figure it out. And you hear that at the cabinet level all the time. We tell people to figure it out. I mean, I think I may have told you this story where probably the thing people hated most at first when I got to Harrison School District was some of the leaders would call me on the phone and I would say, you know what, I can figure it out, or you can figure it out, which one you want. And after a while they started figuring it out. I mean, I've been a principal before, I can figure it out. And it's not that I wasn't going to give them support, but some of them, I didn't want them to get calcified, like they can't make a decision without asking me. They need to figure it out. They need to get with their staff. They need to figure out, given the variables and parameters, what they need to do. Because for as much as people say they want defined autonomy, some people don't. They want political cover. They want somebody else to take the hit if things go bad. And that's not an adaptive organization. Leadership requires you to be autonomous, adaptive, and figure things out. And here's the other thing, and I'm working on this, trust me, I'm working on this. I know right now, part of the culture that we're working on is, some people are afraid to make mistakes. It's a culture thing. And we're responsible for part of that, because I think some people have been beaten up for making mistakes. And that's a bad thing. Now, there are some mistakes that are inexcusable, don't get me wrong. You embezzle money, you're going to go, that's a mistake, you go to jail, they're not going to keep you around. Or you abuse a kid, that's a mistake we're not going to deal with, we're not going to forget, got to go. But there's many other things we do where if you're really pushing the envelope and trying to take the initiative, move to the sound of the guns, be adaptive, be flexible, you're going to make mistakes every once in a while. That should be okay. It should not get you fired. It should not get you on an improvement plan. You should be able to make some mistakes like that. As long as your intent is the right thing, you're working for kids, and that's the goal, then we should allow those mistakes. And I'm working with that with our senior leadership team, with my cabinet, with myself, and we need you to think about that too. Teachers can't live or work in an environment where every time they turn around, they're going to get dinged. So we've got to figure that out. We've got to, over time, do that. And that's why short-term R&D makes sense. In other words, businesses and other organizations invest in, they don't invest in failure. They invest in short-term R&D, knowing that some things are going to fail. It's research and development. Knowing that it's not always going to pan out. Actually invest in that. But the word now in high-functioning organization is to fail faster. In other words, invest, learn, and then improve. If you take 2 or 3 years to learn, you're going to be beat out by the competition. We're not business, but at the same token, we need to be able to fail faster, and then learn from that. Learn from that, and then go forward. We have to do a better job with it. You need to do a good job with your teachers. The organization as a whole needs to be stronger when people make mistakes. And hopefully, you've made a mistake and you've learned from it. I make mistakes all the time. Hopefully, I will learn from those. And we have to be forgiving to a point to where the organization can keep growing. Instead of being so afraid that you don't take risks, you don't innovate, you don't push the envelope, you just go and do what you've always done, and you're afraid to go outside, color outside the box, outside the lines. Okay? Don't hear from that I said, Mr. Miles said, break all the rules and blah, blah. Okay? All right. That's an adaptive organization. Turn to your neighbor, talk to them for just 2 minutes. Is your school adaptive? Are you adaptive? Or do you need to work on that? So you can, those of you who've been here can see some of the principles at work and how we're trying to we're going to keep moving forward on many of those principles to try to get the organization to be the most effective possible as a district. It's going to take some time, but none of these things can work without you operating in similar manners. It won't work unless you work hard at implementing core beliefs and start with philosophy first. It won't work unless you build a culture of accountability and not one of fear. It won't work unless you are flexible and able to deal with ambiguity and your staff, and you try to get your staff to work in those ways. It won't work unless you think about how to be adaptive and your schools to be adaptive and not just the central office folks. So that's what we're doing in the organization broadly, some of the principles by which we're operating. Those are things we're going to keep doing over the next 7 years. Now, when we come back from break, we'll come off the 5,000 foot level and we'll go down into the classroom and talk about good first instruction. Before we go on a break, I need at least 2 questions. Who has the first one? Yeah, thanks for asking. The list of topics that assistant principals and coaches will be trained on so that you'll have an idea when you start your school how to guide your professional development plan. Yes, you will receive it. I'm looking over here. When you will receive it, I don't know. I have no idea. Okay, so we will get back to you on when. But yes, that's training is supposed to take place the 2nd week of August. If you're not doing anything, just drop by. I don't mean you, Tim, yourself. I'm talking about anybody. You don't have anything to do that week, so, I don't know what you could possibly be doing. But you can drop by that training. The answer is we'll get you a list.
Will the APs be evaluated using the GDOT or the matrix that we're on right now? And then
The group, the 3 R's system, but the question is still relevant. And we're going to be talking over the summer about when we start the assistant principal performance rubric. And I don't know the answer to that, because I don't want to make a unilateral decision. Okay. But in the short term, the answer is we're going to use 3R, and then we'll look at a different rubric for assistant principals, which will be very similar to your rubric. Good question. Anybody else? All right, let's take 10, quarter till, I'm going to start. Now I know when we started last year, for some of the things I covered under Good First Instruction, many of you already knew and it was redundant, and that's okay. But for others it was not new material. And in some cases, we actually haven't reached proficiency. So let's talk about Good First Instruction.
But the one thing those who work in the trenches know is that you can't have a great school without great teachers.
When you see a great teacher, you are seeing a work of art. You're seeing a master, and it is as I think unbelievable as seeing a great athlete or seeing a great musician.
Look past all the noise and the debate, and it's easy to see. Nothing will change without them. What happens when a school fails a kid? What happens over time? Now that we know it's possible to give every child a great education, what is our obligation to other people's children? Sometimes I think it's easier to think of the millions of children who are in our schools and look at the numbers and all of the problems, scratch our heads, throw up our hands, and give up, rather than look at just one. And ask ourselves, did we do the right thing? Did we do enough?
Teachers make a difference, and we need to ensure that the quality of instruction is high. Teaching is an art. Teaching is an art. High quality instruction is an art, and it ain't easy. We have to continue to work at our craft. But there are some fundamentals that are easier than the art. It's like a baseball team. There are some fundamental things you do. You know, when you're around second base, you're looking at the third base coach. That's a fundamental. Not looking behind you, where the ball is, looking at the coach. That's a fundamental thing, easy to do once you train people on it. Instruction is an art, it's hard. But there are some fundamental things we know that are good practices or bad practices, and we have to get that right first, the fundamentals. And when I or other instructional leaders see fundamentals being broken, that's not a good thing. That's down to the principal coaching his team properly and holding people accountable for that. Now, for most of the schools it was fine, but I'm telling you, for some schools these fundamentals were not in place and continue to be not in place for most of the year. That is not acceptable. We're going to be harder, more accurate and rigorous on these fundamentals coming up this year. So if you don't understand the fundamentals or you have some disagreement with your executive director, you need to square that away before the start of the school year. Because once the school year starts, we're going to insist on the fundamentals being in place earlier than what we did this year. This year, there was, whether you believe it or not, there was a lot of slack cut with regard to the quality of instruction. We knew that it was new. We knew it was hard. We knew that demonstration of learning takes some time to get used to. We knew that. We knew you were dealing with a whole bunch of other things. The fact that we have EDs, for example. You were dealing with that, a new structure. We knew that. More feedback. All of that's hard to get used to. So we actually cut a lot of slack with regard to these fundamentals. Now that most of you have been here, and new principals, you're going to have to mentor up, or get a mentor quickly, and you have one assigned to you to make sure that you have it down. But these good first instruction things we're going to insist on earlier. That's what the ED's chart will be. Insist on good first instruction first. Okay? So, I'm going to review them quickly for you. These are the things we want to avoid. We've been through, down this road, there are, if you can make a good case in a specific incident, fine, but make that case. But as a general rule, these are things to avoid, and they're well researched and in our practice. First, the definition. Daily classroom instruction that a student receives before interventions are planned. What are things we want to avoid? We have to have stronger writing. Our scores show it. Our 3 to 8 space is not strong. We have to have stronger writing. And one of the things that we know, teachers who teach writing, kids who cannot write well do not do well if you just give them a blank piece of paper and say, write. We know that. I mean, those of us who taught writing know that you just can't put a prompt up there and say, write, and think the kid is going to do something with that. Even the daily log, and I know the intent. If you walk around though and you see the result, you know, this is journal writing for 15 minutes every day, Mr. Miles, and I'm a good teacher, I'm teaching them how to write. Well, the kid can't write, and if the journal is going to have one sentence for 15 minutes, that is not an effective use of that kid's time. And I will debate that with anybody. Having one sentence, you know, write about, I don't know, what you did yesterday. Write about, you know, one of your struggles. I struggled because my dad was an alcoholic, period. 15 minutes later, that's what the kid has. That is not helpful every day to have 15 minutes spent that way. We can figure out a better way to do it. Stream of conscious writing is not good for kids who cannot write. It may help kids who can already write. So, what can you do about that? That's the question. You can teach your teachers how to write well. You can invest in a writing program, get your instructional coach to help, but use a template, use a rubric. I think I told you there's several examples of teachers who are doing it well. And I gave you some of those examples 2 or 3 meetings ago, where I walked into a classroom, there's a teacher teaching 4th grade, has a rubric, the kids are using the rubric, has a template, the kids are using the template, has examples, models. I mean, kids in that kind of environment learn to write. We're going to avoid stream of consciousness, blank sheet writing for kids who don't know how to write well. That's what the research says, that's what's the best thing, let's do it. It's not that hard to say, teacher, your job is to teach kids how to write, so you actually have some skill in that. You will use a rubric, and you will use a template. And if I have to coach you on how to do that, I'm a principal coaching teachers, if I have to coach you, then that's what we're going to do. If I have to hook you up with Mrs. Smith, that's what we're going to do. Figure it out, no stream of consciousness writing. And when I say stream of consciousness, for those of you who are high school and you actually are using this genre of writing, this type of writing, that's fine for the kids who can write, you know what I mean? So if you want to use that at the high school level as one of the things, that style, and it's a very specific lesson, that's fine. Observer math. It's almost common sense, but we have got to get better at this, and we're going to insist on that. There's simple techniques to avoid observer math. Observer math is when kids are not doing math, they're just watching math. And we can avoid that. It doesn't mean 100% of the time they're never watching math. But we have to do it to the extent where kids are doing math, not just watching you do math or watching another kid do math. I've given you examples before. if nothing else, have the students working on a math problem while the student at the board is working on the math problem. I would have them working on different math problems, because otherwise it becomes a copying exercise. Guys, I wish you could walk around with me sometimes and see what I see. Just go with me, and some of the School Leader Academy fellows have done that. And it's painfully obvious when there's a better way. Having Johnny, who doesn't like math, sit in the back of the room, watch 4 of his classmates go up to the board one after another, watching that math be done, and just copying what's up there. And then you go to Johnny, you ask him, do you know how to do this? No. Well, you just spent 20 minutes copying, several problems. You still don't know? No. Is that a surprising answer? No, it's not a surprising answer, because the act of copying doesn't require much mental activity. Right? I've used the example, you could copy Russian right now. You could copy the Cyrillic characters. You may not know Russian, you can still copy it. Doesn't mean you know it. You can copy Latin, you can copy calculus, you can copy anything. Doesn't mean you're going to learn it. So the act of copying is not learning, usually. It may be repetition, so there's some learning and repetition, but it's not the best effective way of teaching the kid who's behind. So stop. Teacher, we're going to insist on that. You need to insist on that. Not me, not the EDs, the principal of the school needs to insist on that. Help the teachers support, help the teachers find better ways. Dark rooms, meaning where all the lights are out and we're watching a film or something like that for, more than just a few minutes. Every once in a while I get it, the dimmer didn't work, or there's no outside light or something like that, and you have such a poor PowerPoint or LCD that you can't see the screen. So, on occasion it makes sense. But let's figure it out. Bring a lamp, get a dimmer, do what you have to do to make sure we don't have totally dark rooms. Why? Because it's research-based that kids fall asleep in totally dark rooms. That the chemical, I keep forgetting, the melatonin. Serotonin or melatonin? Melatonin. That's activated when there's darkness. The sleep chemical. Don't quote me. Go Google it. Put the right one in there. For all I know, it's some kind of sex hormone. And then you're going to quote me, and it's like I'm telling everybody the wrong thing. Google it. And figure that out. But let's figure that out. We can do it. Along with this is you have to have writing big enough. It drives me crazy. I'm watching the kids. I go in the classroom, right? And the print on the screen, because it's a projector and overhead, is really small. And I know I'm getting old, so all things are small, when I'm looking at the page. But kids are squinting, they can't read it. And so I'm, nudging Johnny again. It's like, can you read that? No. Why are you sitting back here? It's my seat. Okay, that makes certain sense. But he can't see it. Films. People are still trying to sneak in those films. I don't get it. Okay? Way too many films. Films after school, great. Films before school, great. As opposed to movie clips, little clips, Mr. Science, clips that you stop and you teach with, that's all good. I'm talking about films like Life of Pi, which is a great movie. We don't need to show Life of Pi for 2 hours. There's no reason to do that. And there's worse ones. Poor readers reading in class. Why do we do this? Someone's got to come up to me and explain that. Poor readers reading to the entire class. There are better ways, that's all I'm saying. Better ways, let's find them, let's do that. Round robin reading is the same thing. We talked about that. Crayola curriculum, often disguised. Do the research, Google Crayola curriculum and read, so you don't just listen to me. Google it, read it, about what that means. But essentially it is a strategy, when there are better strategies than having kids draw or practice art, when it's not art, that is the objective. That is a Crayola curriculum. When art is not the objective. So for example, we're reading a novel as opposed to, I don't know what the objective might be, it might be identify the theme of this chapter or this novel, identify characterization of this person and how that character develops, right? That would be objectives of reading or language arts at the high school level. And the child then has to design a book cover for the novel. Now, if the book cover has a rubric that in some way could define the personalization, characterization that's going on in the novel, then fine. But if it's just the title of the novel made in a graphically stimulating way, I don't know how that fits with characterization. You see what I mean? That would be Crayola curriculum. And some of our kids, that's all they're doing is drawing. Excessive copying. This, and I go around the schools and you don't see me going crazy and I didn't yell and scream or anything like that. But on the inside, where there's excessive copying, that drives me crazy. On the inside. Why? Because I'm watching the kids and they're spending 20 minutes copying things on the wall, and I know that copying is not a critical thinking skill. There are better ways of doing business than copying long definitions or long notes for that child. Worksheets that are not aligned or purposeful, I think that's obvious. Happens. I did not see many of these. That's good. We need to get away from this. Doesn't mean that there's never a time for it. In fact, there's probably an exception to all of these things that I'm putting up here. Repeated single responses. Again, what that means for those who are new is we ask a question, 2 people raise their hand, 1 person responds, we call that good, and we go on to the next thing. Who knows the answer to this? Johnny. Good. All right, here's another question. Who knows the answer to this? Sally. Good. Here's another one. Who knows the answer to this? Johnny. Again. Good. And then we keep going. We are teaching the 2 or 3 kids in that case. That's why we use multiple response strategies, by the way. Doing homework in class, excessive review of homework in class, earning free time. Copying definitions. We're defining words with what kind of. Believe it or not, after the training we had, we still had teachers have kids open up the dictionary and copy the definition out of the dictionary. Everybody knows that there are better ways than doing that. Now, when I see that, what am I supposed to think? The teacher has not been trained, maybe? That's one thing I would think. The teacher has been trained, but is ignoring the principal. Or 3, the principal's not checking. And does not follow through to make sure that's happening. It's just like Miss Canoe. Remember yesterday we criticized her? She got an unsat in leadership, partly because she was avoiding the tough choices. Guys, if we see a lot of this, it is the principal's responsibility. All of you have the skills and the knowledge to make sure these things don't happen. Practice listening and reading when reading is not the purpose. We still see this. Guys, there's no reason why we should see this. It is a bad practice. And there are so many alternatives. So when I see this, I'm thinking the leadership is not in the school. You know what I mean by presentations that are just too many presentations? Meaning, and this happened again, I won't tell the school, several schools it's happened in, where a kid gets up and presents for 3 minutes, their chart, their poster, their story, their essay, and we get the next kid presenting for 3 minutes, their chart, their poster, their essay. There's no rubric to score it, but okay, fine, even if there were, after the third one, most kids are checked out. Then we go to the fourth one. Meanwhile, what is Sally doing back there? She's checked out. You know, most of the kids are checked out. I saw this happen, or heard of this happening in gym class. I didn't see it. In gym class, 2 lines of kids. 20 kids there, 20 kids here. All right, you two, you're playing one-on-one basketball. You play one-on-one. Play one-on-one, minute, 2 minutes. Somebody finally makes a basket. Okay, good, go to the back line. Next 2 kids. What are all the other kids doing for the rest of the time? Standing, being bored, hating PE class, not being energetic, not burning calories, standing there talking to each other, because the ones that are really creative and smart, they cannot stand there for 20 minutes waiting for their turn. So they will figure out a way to be active. Because they're smart, they have initiative, they're you know, I mean, I don't want to stand for 20 minutes watching other kids play. It's PE class. I brought my shorts today. And I bugged my mom to watch them, you know, and now I'm here. And I'm standing. I could have worn jeans. Anyway, you get my point. That must be a pet peeve of mine. Back to my childhood and happy flashbacks. Random spelling, you know, there's nothing wrong with spelling vocabulary. Let's do it in context. Let's be purposeful about the words we pick. Our kids are behind in vocabulary, many of them are behind in vocabulary. Which vocabulary words are the ones that they need to know most? They don't need to know how to spell artichoke. It's not a high frequency word. If they're behind, okay? Now if they're not behind, okay, that's fine. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, ahead of the story that has artichoke, just saying, hey, you're gonna see the word artichoke, it means this. And move on. You don't have to learn that word relative to all the other words that need to be learned. Again, we're talking about kids who are behind, that need to be purposeful about what they're learning. Get that list of, what's that list of? Fry, I was thinking of fry, but there's other lists too. I was thinking of fry words. But at least be purposeful. So choose fry, choose the other group. Be purposeful about the high frequency of the words that they really need. Let's do that rather than a random list, spelling. And we're spending way too much time on spelling. It's as if somebody said every Friday you have to have a spelling quiz. Well, you don't. You don't have to have a spelling quiz every Friday. Now, don't go and say, Mr. Miles said we cannot have spelling quiz on Friday. That's not what I said. I said we're doing way too many spelling quizzes. All right, that's what we don't want to see, guys. There's better ways. Work with your colleagues, work with your instructional coaches, work with your facilitators, work with the EDs, work with somebody to find alternative ways to teach. That's all the repertoire a teacher has. Hopefully, I just read you presented and a teacher, you know, is doing 5 or 6 of those things on a regular basis. They're going to freak out. But let them freak out because coach them on a way to do it better, an alternative. And then they won't freak out. Okay. What should we be doing? What is psychology? Very few things. It has to be aligned. This is what we should be seeing. An aligned, creative That means the teacher has to know what kids should know and be able to do, and they have to understand when the kids demonstrate that. That's what we should be doing. Number two, it has to be purposeful, which means the activities are relevant and challenging, and every aspect of class is tied to learning. We didn't spend a lot of time on time management. That's your autonomy. That's your deal. Every single minute should be used. Even to the point, principals, when you go into class in April, and I've done this, and the teacher's taking role like this, Sally, here, Billy, here, Manuel, here, Jose, here, Lakeisha, here. If a teacher's doing that in April, she's wasting time. Not an effective teacher. Why? Because by April, you should be able to glance at the room because you have purposeful assigned seating, purposeful. It's not come and go as you please. And you can tell in a second how many kids you have. You know, this is a April deal. Actually, after the first couple of weeks, you should know your kids in your classroom. Even if you have 150 of them. You know what the most effective teacher, well, there's lots of different techniques. Teachers put name tags up so that they learn faster. Some teachers have asked kids if they can take their picture so that they learn the kid's face and names. And some people are just good at memorizing student rosters. But they figure it out because kids like to be called by their name, not you. Effective strategies. Engaging. Scaffolded will do more training this year. Rigorous and differentiated. Oops. Let me go back, just in case you're taking notes. Aligned, purposeful, uses good strategies, engaging. Definition of engaging, for those who are not familiar, is when all students and the teacher are engaged in learning, in productive learning. So what that means is when one or two kids are listening to you or answering questions, that's not engagement. That's engagement for them. That's not engagement for the class. When kids are sitting there with their eyes open, that's not engagement. I mean, I've had this argument with a couple of folks. That's not engagement. The fact that they're quiet, compliant. You know, we have good kids in Dallas. We do. You need to go around to different cities in the country, and then you have some perspective. Our kids in Dallas are great kids. If anything, they are too compliant. I know there are blowouts every once in a while. There are some discipline problems. I get it. But on the whole, you go to class, the kids are compliant. They're doing what they're asked to do. They're looking at you, or they're not looking at you, but they're not misbehaving. Open eyes in a quiet environment is not engagement. We need multiple response strategies, and we'll talk more about that later this summer. The last thing is scaffolding, or not scaffolding, is differentiation. All right. Turn to your neighbor. Talk to them about how strong your good first instruction is in your school. Sorry, guys. There are other things going on in the district, so I apologize. But hopefully you had a chance to talk about good first instruction. Comments or questions about good first instruction and where you think your schools are? Elizabeth, what do you think about good first instruction?
One thing that I was thinking to maybe be added would be really thinking about the ratio of student talk versus teacher talk. So I think a lot of times we go to classrooms and you can observe and never really hear any of the student voices or discussions. The entire time it's the teacher talking. So then really just thinking about what is the evidence of learning and how do you know they're getting it.
Very good. And I think if you're using multiple response strategy, you're going to get a higher ratio of student talk to teacher talk if you're doing that. Good one. Other thoughts? Yes, Tim. Love the thinking. You hear that, right? That what he said was, given the experience level of his staff and the capacity at this point, it might be a good idea before school starts or as school is starting to review those common things to avoid, but also provide several examples from teachers of what's an alternative to each of those. So instead of doing a poor reader reading to others, what could you do? Instead of doing presentations one after another, what could you do? You know, and have other teachers do that. So that's good leadership. That's what we want. We want you to take the bull by the horns and help your staff. Provide the support so it's not a climb of fear. Excellent. Anybody else have a good thought? Yeah.
One thing that I did this year around avoiding the round robin readings, to make sense of it for teachers, I actually showed them the numbers. So let's say you have 20 kids in a class and there's 10 pages that have to be read. If you're doing round robin reading, only 50% of students are engaged in only 10% of the text. Versus buddy readings where 100% of students are engaged with 50% of the text. And nobody can argue with those numbers.
I like that too. So just a way of making sense of some of these is giving the data around it, what it looks like in reality. You know, another thing you might do, and it's related, is if people are willing to be filmed, so don't force anybody to be filmed, but film some of these practices. Just film what the kids are doing when there's presentations going. Just film the other kids, and then just show that to the teacher. Because sometimes I think it's the tape in the head. You know, my brain, I'm very visual, so I have this tape playing when I'm watching the classroom, and I can see the kids, and I play that tape in my head. But sometimes I don't think the teacher sees that tape. You know, of what's going on with the kids. Good. Anything else? Those are good thoughts. All right. Good first instruction. That's what we want as we go forward this year, as well as these other things. Just remember, those are the fundamentals. That's not the art yet. We get the art scaffolding, good, demonstration of learning, and multiple response strategy, and differentiated instruction, that kind of thing. These are the baseball fundamentals, or sports fundamentals that we want for any teacher in the classroom. All right, do you need a break, or are we good? We're good. All right, we're going to keep going. That means you'll get a longer lunch, I guess. I built those expectations so man, that's messed up. Shouldn't do that. Okay, we're gonna shift gears. We're gonna shift gears to action plan. I'm just gonna go over the district's action plan. Because you are going to spend time this afternoon working on your action plan. I know you've got a lot of things going on, you're trying to wrap up things, but one of the things you need to wrap up is your draft action plan by the end of June, I think they're due. And then your EDs will review them. You should have the action planning rubric. It's on Curriculum Central. And you should also have the District 13-14 action plan. The reason why we've done this presentation, this will be the second time, or maybe the third time you've seen a part of the action plan, is because your school action plan should work in reinforcing ways with the district action plan. So you don't do too many things. Okay? So I'm going to show you what we're doing and what we're focused on so that you can guide your actions by the district action plan. And trust me, less is more. Less is more. The folks over here know that we're not going to be impressed with an action plan this thick, or with 6 or 7 goals. It can be 3 or 4 in my book. 3 or 4 is enough to do really well, because the action plan is only the trim tab. It's not all the things you have to do. So let's talk about the district's action plan. You know, I try to stay up before we put together the things that we have to do. I try to look at the research. I try to stay up on the profession, on the things that, at least on my level, we need to consider. And so I recommended a couple of reports to you before. I'm going to continue to do that. One is the Equity and Excellence Commission report. And in this example here, the language of the Equity and Excellence Commission report is very similar to the Nation of This report. This is the one that came out in 1983. And this is the one that came out in 2013. So a good synopsis of what school districts should do can be found in this report, Equity and Excellence Commission report. Especially for districts that are struggling or have a high population of poverty or at-risk kids. So our focus still is to graduate college and career-ready students. That's what we're going to do. That's the end game. That's why we exist. So that kids will either be college ready or career ready, and then for more specific goal by 2020. So it's about college and career ready. That doesn't mean that we're only going to focus on high school. We're going to actually need to start in preschool or earlier to get this goal done. In particular, we still have these goals. Reach a graduation rate of 90%, 40% of our students to attain a 21 or higher on the ACT exam, 75% of our students proficient on a year 2020 workplace readiness assessments, which we are going to be designing. And 80% of our students enter college, the military, or career-ready jobs straight from high school. Just to give you some perspective of the distance we have to travel, well, some people think, well, 40% getting over 21 on ACT, that should be pretty easy, right? Well, that's not going to be easy. That's where that green line is where the goal is, that green line, and that's where all of our schools are last year. ACT school. So we've got a long way to go before reaching that goal. And we're still focused on these things. Principles are still the key. So let's go just quickly. Number one of the district action plan is teachers, ensure highly effective teachers for all students. Keep in mind when you write your action plan that one of the things we're going to try to make sense of, we're going to ask you to help make sense of during the first semester is to tie teacher evals to student achievement data. We will do it. We are already involving a lot of teachers, but I can guarantee you guys this will be a point of contention for many. And that's okay. I mean, just be ready for it. I don't know if it'll be a point of contention in your school, but you're going to have to spend some time and energy, and teachers are going to have to spend time and energy engaged in this debate in a productive way and in a way that's positive and supportive. So tying teacher evals to student achievement, that's one of the biggest things we're doing next year. We are changing professional development. You'll see that in the budget a little bit to support more training on curriculum alignment and best practices. You already know about the instructional coach requirement. That's that one. You already know about this. That's going to happen this year. And we got asked yesterday about the twice a month professional developments. And could we expand it? And so we're looking into that right now. We're going to continue to grow our Teach for America teachers. Keep in mind, yesterday I think I said 180. We have 9,800 classroom teachers. It's not like a huge number. It's still an important pipeline. That's goal number one, teachers, ensuring highly effective teachers for all students. Talk to your neighbor about goal number one. How does that fit in with what you're doing in your school? All right, let's go on. Goal number 2. Look, you're still there. Ensure a highly effective leader in every school. We're going to continue to work on that. So, we're going to continue with the School Leaders Academy. Assuming the budget passes on Thursday. I think I told you yesterday we're going to look at compensating the principal based on effectiveness. So, the principal's focus group will continue to meet around that. We're going to continue with the model we have with executive directors, coaching principals. And one thing we don't have up here, we will be starting a Principal Leadership Institute. All that is an invitation to many of you to go through additional training on leadership. It'll be, I don't know if we'll do it by volunteers or by invitation, but we'll see. There's too many of you to do all of you and make it a very, high impact program. So that'll be coming. That'll just be another growth opportunity, a leadership opportunity for somebody. Anyway, that's goal number 2. That's part of the district action plan. Turn to your neighbor and talk about how this impacts you. Alrighty. On the principal compensation, we're going to have the principal focus group, and we'll do a call out to that. We're going to reorganize it a little bit in August. But don't worry, you'll get a lot of chance for input, all of you, not just the principal focus group, okay? So don't stress over that. We're going to try not to do something to you. We're going to try to do it with you. And hopefully most of you will see that it's going to increase overall principal salaries in the district. This is goal number 3. We are, again, we are trying to be prudent or fiscally sound with our money. And we don't have money to do everything we want to do. So sometimes it doesn't seem like a lot, but it's little steps every year that we take that eventually get us to where we need. So it sounds like not a lot, 10 police officers, but that's our contribution this year. And then you might remember we're adding almost $5 million in extra security for the elementary schools in particular, but in cameras and stuff at the secondary level also. So that's a hefty investment. It doesn't sound like a hefty investment, but it is, okay, given where we are. Number 4, parental involvement. This is the district's portion, and there's other things we're doing. These are just the big bullets on parental involvement. We need you, though, to really work on that, and if it's part of your action plan, even better. If it's not a major focus, and you have other competing priorities, I get that, but think long and hard about making that one of your key actions that you do. We know we need good parental engagement. People who don't know the business think that it can be done at the district level. It cannot, I'm telling you. Parents don't care about central office. They really don't. They don't care about Ross Avenue. Parents care about their kid and the teachers in the school building down the street, or wherever their kid is being bused to. That's what parents care about most. Parental engagement happens best when it happens at the school level. And there are things that principals need to do to be as engaging and as inviting to parents as possible. It's part of your evaluation system. It'll be part of the teacher's evaluation system probably. We're looking at that right now. But we need you to think about ways of how you engage and make your school inviting. One of the things you can do to help is to have opportunities for parents to volunteer. Another thing you can do to help is to change the way you do parent-teacher conferences so that parents are engaged in what that conference looks like. And it's very specific to what the parent has tried to do. And we can do a session on this if you want. Maybe we will at one of the breakout sessions in July. How to get better parent engagement, how to do a parent-teacher conference in a way that's engaging parents. Don't worry, I get it. I've been in a high school as a teacher, been in a middle school. I know that parents aren't always engaged. It's a two-way street. What are the things we can do to help with that? That's the question. Instead of just throwing up our hands and saying, well, at the secondary level, the parents aren't engaged. So, parental involvement is something we gotta all try to work on. We're gonna continue to work on the quality of instruction. And this year, not only are we gonna reinforce the 4 things that you've been working on for all years: lesson objectives, demonstration of learning, multiple response strategies, purposeful aligned instruction. Some of your schools still need work on these 4 areas. I wouldn't throw in new stuff because we're still going to be looking for these 4. All right, don't abandon these 4. These are still on the spot observation. There's still things that are going to be things we look at because these are also fundamental things. But we're going to help you with scaffolding this year and try to do a little bit more of that and rigor. That doesn't mean you stop there. If you want to go on and do some more training, your school is already where it needs to be, do differentiated instruction, which is also very hard to teach teachers to do, but it can be done. We're going to help with scaffolding and some differentiated instruction at the twice-a-month professional development for teachers. So again, we're talking about things that the district is doing so that when you write your action plan, it'll be more aligned and you won't be too redundant or work in ways that are not reinforcing. And we're going to focus a lot more on after-school tutoring. All right, think about that. Quality of instruction, the instructional priorities from last year. Think about training and scaffolding and differentiation. And think about after-school tutoring. Talk to your neighbor about how that impacts your action plan. All right, let's keep going. Yeah, again, I apologize for being on the cell phone. It's just things are happening. Don't go looking at the blogs yet. Try to focus. We're also going to expand ACT, SAT exams, and also pay for the AP exams. We know we have to do more with writing and literacy. Culture, we're going to continue with the core beliefs. By the way, in the action plans I used to write as a principal, I'm not saying you have to do this, but remember philosophy was a big thing, and I always had expanding core beliefs or sense making of the philosophy and culture as part of my action plan. That was always one of the key actions. We're going to continue to conduct climate surveys. We're going to start student surveys though. We're going to start the feeder patterns and it'll be expanded. What does that mean? Student surveys around how they feel about their teachers and schools in a general way. There are several surveys that are done very professionally. One organization that's done some of this, and they have some pretty good research in this tripod, and so we'll probably be working with them or some group like them in order to conduct student surveys. They do a great job of asking kids how they feel about being challenged at school, whether they feel bored at school, whether they feel safe at school, things like that. And so student surveys is something we're going to start. This is case manager system recruitment. We're going to continue. We're going to continue to do the strategic feeder pattern concept. We've spent the year planning. Now we're going to implement. You probably know that we're working on a more robust student data management system that's only going to help you down the road. The data team meetings every third Friday, those are going to continue, so you can go ahead and plan that in your schedule. For those who don't know, in a cycle of 3 Fridays, each principal has to attend a data team meeting with their colleagues, and then they're chaired by the executive director. And sometimes the executive director allows the principal to chair it. One of the principals to chair it or host it. We're going to continue to do those. We'll get better at them. They actually got pretty good at the end by the second semester, and we'll perfect that as we go along. Reasoning mind in 2nd and 3rd grade, expand to 4th grade in strategic feeder patterns, and in other schools, there's an opt-out option for 4th grade. Central office organized central services encourage and enhance support, so we're going to continue with the 32 systems. That work is going on. That you don't have a lot of work to do there, but we will get our act together to help you. And we're creating a project management office so that the 32 systems can be tracked and we make good on it. We've already prioritized the use of the bond monies, and now we're going to continue to establish service level agreements to help you maintain the schools. And many of you have helped with this work request system, and so we're going to expand the use of that. That's it, that's what we're doing. That's the 2013-2014 action plan. I hope you notice that most of it's the same, so there's not a lot that's different. There'll be some things that we add on to it, but as far as the school level work goes, most of it's the same. We add a little bit more professional development in different areas. We rely on you to do most of the professional development, your targeted professional development for your staff, and we're available through academic facilitators or the executive directors to help. Okay, so there's some defined autonomy there with regard to professional development. Questions about the 2013-2014 action plan as a whole? Why don't you talk to your neighbor, before I get to the question, why don't you talk to your neighbor about how much difference it will be next year than it was this year with regard to the action plan? How different will it be next year? Okay. Questions about the 2013-2014 action plan, and you have the first one.
With regards to the professional development, the twice a month professional development, is there going to be a system where the academic facilitators train the instructional coaches, who in turn train the teachers, or how's that going to work?
So on the instructional coaches and academic facilitators will have additional coaching, and that's going to be done by school leadership. The twice a month professional development, there's a menu. There'll be different workshops for Saturday, one day a month, one Saturday a month. All of this is voluntary. And then I think one Tuesday evening a month for teachers or anybody else to go to. These are all voluntary. You'll see what the training schedule looks like. It'll be ready by the beginning of the year, and teachers can go to that. So it's not meant to be a trainer model, it's just supplemental. They'll be training on multiple response strategies, different, how to avoid first grade instruction issues, things like that. The instructional coaches and academic facilitators will be trained not only in that week of second week of August, but throughout the year by the EDs and others. Yes, sir.
I didn't see the plan, any mention of like the longitudinal technology that you have in mind, where you're going with that, and can you speak a little bit about that, where you're going with technology?
Yeah, so the reason why I didn't see that in there is because we are actually looking at how we're going to expand our technology in the classroom. So we'll be looking closely this year at blended learning, flipped classrooms, one-on-one initiatives. That study is going to go on before we do anything major. I'm a big fan of things like the Khan Academy and Mr. Science and all those things so that kids can learn online even during school day. I'm not sure about flipped classrooms, but I'm okay with people studying it and looking at that. That's where you actually do the lecture online at night, and then during the day, you do the homework and support because the teacher's available. But you know, there's many different ways we have to look at that. Now that we have our fiber network in, we have better technology platform, or at least bandwidth to do some of those things. So the answer is it's not in the action plan because we're not sure which actions we've got to take across the district. And we're going to be looking at that. That won't prevent you from doing what you need to do to incorporate technology into the classroom. Other questions about 13 and 14? All right, before I close, questions about anything else? Who's reading the blogs? Stop about that. We've got some reorganization of the cabinet going on. That's probably what you, if you want to know why I'm on the phone and not being present while you're doing your thing. So we got Grace Saladin, who's been our Assistant Superintendent for Technology. We're promoting him to Chief of Technology. We have Jim Terry, who's been working in the finance group. He's going to be the new CFO. We have Carmen Darville, who's been working really hard as an executive director in ACM. She's going to be the head of human capital management. She's going to be replacing Charles Glover, who's taken a job with a group called Bellwether. And that's a national educational institution. And then you have Wanda Paul, who's been working in operations, who will be taking Kevin Smoker's place as chief, and he's going back to Colorado. He came down here to help me out for a little while, and he's done a good job. So that's what you're going to hear, and that's what all the buzz is about, and the phones are ringing off the hook and stuff like that. So still, put the blogs away. You're going to focus up here to the last part. So any other questions about anything? No?
Assistant Sue's been hired?
No, we have 2 ED positions and 1 assistant superintendent position hired. We've had that assistant super position open, you know, for most of the year, but we are going to fill it. And so I have 3 interviews on Friday, tomorrow, tomorrow afternoon. So hopefully by next week we'll have an assistant sup and a couple of EDs positions filled. There'll be a little bit of movement of the EDs, but not much. A couple. Good question, thank you. Any other questions? Now's your chance to get the real scoop. Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to know, have you revisited the policy for teachers who are retiring, the days that they can take off and all of that?
Thank you for asking, really. The question is, are we going to review the policy with regard to teachers and if they're retiring, how many days they can take off, and things like that? And the answer is, one of my big priorities for the summer is to look at that policy and also the teacher attendance policy, and to look at how we can put some teeth into it, both reward and consequences. For example, I'm a big believer that you should pay people if they don't use days. And I think we're going to start that. I know it happened a long time ago, then the district stopped, and now we're going to try to do it again. So, but we have to look at attendance policy and enforce a good attendance policy. Now, there's some things we can't do, and mean, it's state law, so we're going to have to follow the state law. State law. But the answer is yes, we're going to look at that very closely. Thanks for asking. Any other questions like that? Or any type of questions? All right. This afternoon you're going to do action planning, so I'm not going to be seeing you this afternoon. I'm going to go take care of some other things. But yesterday, some of you were here, actually many of you were here for the celebration of the Principal of the Year. And really, I think it was just a celebration of principals. You know, the couple speakers had that common thread in their remarks that while we are going to be recognizing principals last night, really we're recognizing anybody who steps up to the plate to be a principal, because it is tough work. And you will never get compensated the way you should, ever. And you will never get rewarded the way you should, ever. That's just something we kind of just know going into it. And I was telling the group last night, the real reward, it only comes close to the real reward is when you go back, like last summer I was flying back and forth and I stopped in a grocery store and a mother came up to me, a woman came up to me, and she's a mother of a kid that was a student in the school where I was principal. And she said, you know, do you remember Sam Scheidegger? And I did, because I was always in trouble, you know? Those are the names you remember, the stars, the kids who give you, you know, headaches. Anyway, she thanked me because he's now a naval officer, and we squared him away, you know? And she thanked me at that time, and it was just me and her, nobody knew about it, and it's just one of those things, and then that's the reward. And if you get rewarded like that, then this may be the profession for you. If you want something else for a reward, then you're never going to be compensated the way you should. But we had some people that we did highlight last night, and who put this film together? It was really well done. DSTV put this together, well done, and I wanted to show it to you because it highlights the finalists, and then we'll tell you who the winner was, just in case you don't know.
This is my 50th year to work in the Adamson School District. What I do here in Dallas is for the kids. It's because of the leaders I have and the great teachers I have that inspired me to become a teacher leader. What if I say that's the name of a color? The sun, yes. Yellow. See, it says yellow. The way I like children to remember me is someone who helped them, someone that made them realize their dreams so that they can do what they want to do in their future. And what comes after 10? 11. You're right. Good job for always asking kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I don't think we ever followed through with that. I have students come up to me all the time, and their roles as bankers and people that work in industries, big industries, and they tell me what a great job I did as a teacher. So I hope as a principal, the same thing can be said. You're doing a great job. Actually, during my student teaching, Dr. Adamson was the assistant principal at Howard Elementary at the time, and I was doing student teaching in 6th grade then. And he said, you need to think about going into administration, you would be a great administrator. We both laughed, and I said, well, let me get through my student teaching first, and then we can look at administration a few years down the road. And he said, Mija, you have what it takes. The kids love you, and you love the kids, and you're very serious about the business of education. I'd have to say that probably the greatest joy that I find from the principalship is working with people. Developing capacity is my key focus. Developing capacity within students, within staff members, within parents and community. It's a mutual learning process. I learn from them and hopefully they're learning from me. And it's about aiming for excellence without any excuse. I'm a homegrown Texan, and I believe in our students here in Dallas. I believe in the staff. And I know that we have everything that it takes to be the best district in this nation.
You ready for a great day today? Yes? All right, excellent. I love seeing the kids. I mean, that's really what it's all about. Coming through those doors and seeing everybody walking down the hallway and asking if they're ready for a great day. You guys ready for a great day today? Yes? All right. You know, it seems like this, some of the kids, they got a lot of struggles at home, but it seems like something magic can happen to them when they're walking through the door. The sun, focus on a really great experience that we can provide here at school. The biggest thrill I get in my job is going to a classroom where great instruction is taking place, where the teacher is asking these really fantastic questions or design a really rigorous activity, and the kids are really getting into it. And you can just see that the wheels are turning in the kids, the wheels are turning in the teacher, and just really great things are happening. To me, that is like the greatest thrill there is. Really great teaching and learning in the classroom. Yeah? You gonna be all right today? Yeah? All right, my brother. I'll talk to you later.
My mom is a school teacher, and I have very fond memories of going to her classroom and pretending as though I was a teacher. And so when I went to college, I studied child development, and then after I graduated, I moved to be a teacher. I feel like as a principal, I'm still a teacher because I still work with teachers, adults, I work with children as well. So I just feel like I've become full circle at this point. What I like most about coming to work are the children, obviously. I can be having the worst day, and a child will inevitably come up to me and say, I love you so much. And that just makes me remember, why I'm doing this. It's what it is. I feel really, really honored to be nominated for Principal of the Year. I'll be honest with you, this is nothing that I even thought about attaining. As I was going through the nomination process, it really caused me to reflect on my practices, and it's just one more thing in my life that's causing me to take my job seriously and make sure I'm doing the best for our children here at Adamson.
I enjoy being in and around the kids. I love to bring them in the morning when they come in. I love to spend time with them during lunch. And when I'm able, I like to be here when they leave and wish them to have a good evening. And anything that has to do with the kids, I enjoy. Dallas is my home. I was born and raised here, lived here my entire life. I wouldn't live anywhere else, and I wouldn't work anywhere else. I just love this city and the neighborhood I'm in, and love the schools where I've worked. I just would not do anything else but work at Dallas. Any honors this school has won while I have been principal is a result of the work of the entire community, teachers, students, parents. They're the real reason they won the honors, and I'm just privileged to have been part of the school during that time.
The hardest job I've ever had in my life. I can deal with the hours, I can deal with the commitment, it is a commitment. It can be overwhelming at times due to the amount of responsibilities that a principal has. Not only do you have to be an instructional leader, you have to manage employees. You have to manage the adults as well as the children. There's a lot of systems that you have to put in place to make sure the whole school functions. The operational side of the job is very difficult at times. But I enjoy visiting the classrooms, and the students really love when they get to see their administrators interacting and engaging in the same lessons that they are participating in. So I try to get in the classroom as much as possible and interact with the kids in that capacity. I just have been blessed to be in a school that has had academic success, and they already have systems in place that I can just kind of fine tune, make my own a little bit, and move forward to continue that success.
like to announce that Richard Heffernan. Stand up. That's wonderful. Quite an honor, sir. And I just want to let you know, too, that Sylvia Fuentes is an executive director now. Where are you, Sylvia? Executive directors don't have to be here, so all right. Great honor, but really on behalf of all the principals, well done this last year. I'm looking forward to seeing you when you get back from your break in July. We'll get down to some nitty-gritty training and get ready for a brand new year. Thanks for all your attention the last couple days. Thanks for all your work this last year. And I will see you, they'll see you back here at 12:45? 12:45, look at that. Oh, wait, one last thing.
I would be remiss if we did not mention that last night we also celebrated the Assistant or Associate Principal of the Year, and we had two nominees, and one I know is here, and our Assistant Principal of the Year, Mr. Brian DeVoe. In case you have not heard, has joined the ranks of the principalship. He will be the new principal at Roosevelt High School.
All right, thank you. 12:45.